to the May meeting of the Maritime Advisory Board of the City of Annapolis. As is my usual custom, I go around my screen and identify who is present tonight. And in this particular case, we have Alderman Arnett in the up top left-hand corner, and then Peter Trogdon, a member of the board. Next to Peter is Matt Fleming, who is, I don't know your official title, I refer to you as the resiliency guru, who's going to give us a presentation this evening. Andy Fagley, who is a member, Rick Nelson, a member, Duncan Hood, member, Mike Tomasini, a member and vice chair. We have Hope Stewart from the Office of Planning and Zoning. We have Frida Wildy just joined, so she's moving the boxes around. We have Josh from the City of Annapolis TV, and we have Debbie Goslin, who is a regular guest and former member who we always welcome. And I think that covered everybody. We may have some others join as we go along. I did promise Hope, who was going to be very brief, that I would let her go first. And then we'll get to take Mr. Fleming so that we don't have him. He doesn't have to sit through our minutia of approving of minutes and all sorts of things.
Well, I thought that I would go first too, because it kind of feeds into Matt Fleming's presentation on resilience. So the big thing on our end is we met with businesses on City Dock, the Dock Street businesses who will be impacted by the City Dock construction. I know that Jake Iverson was there. So our plan is to meet with these businesses about every 4 to 6 weeks to keep them updated on the construction throughout the entire process. So, and I'm sure we'll keep you all updated as well. But, resiliency is at the heart of this project. So, I'm sure Matt will have plenty more to tell us.
Hope, just one question. Is there
Yes.
I know construction schedules from my law practice. I know construction schedules are a wish, not often a reality. But is there an actual schedule published?
I don't know if it's published yet. I know what the plan is right now. We're doing utility work, and that's why they've closed off some of the parking spaces around City Dock. But they aren't planning to actually start construction until after the boat show.
Okay, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you. Matt Fleming, if you want to introduce yourself and tell us what is good about resiliency these days.
I'd be happy to. I had some slides that I can share here. Let me see real quick. I do like the title Guru. I might have to put that on it may be false advertised, but I might have to put that on a business card. All right. So real quick, Mr. Chairman, how much time would you like from me? How much time do you want me to go for? And I'll jump in.
If 20 minutes would be good, but enough to cover the subject, I guess.
Yeah, and certainly I don't have to take full 20. I know you guys got a big agenda, so I'll jump right in and I'll skip through some slides, and if there are questions that folks want me to go back to, I can do that as well.
Okay.
So real quick, I'm not going to go through this. It's a quick introduction to myself. So Matt Fleming, I'm the Director of Resilience Authority of Annapolis, San Bernardino County. Prior to this, I spent 25 years at the Maryland Department of Natural Resources. I was the Assistant Secretary for the water side. So everything from boating, fishing, bay restoration, the climate programs, the monitoring program. So if my name or face looks familiar and you're mad at me, it's the prior job, hopefully not the current one. So real quick, Andrew, is there any relation to Lynn Fagley? Sorry, I didn't mean to catch you.
You're muted, Andy.
Hey, absolutely yes. I was just making notes saying because she's the acting director of fisheries now, I believe. Yes, she's my sister-in-law.
She is wonderful. So please pass along. I've very much enjoyed growing up and watching her excel at DNR. So
that's great. Thank you.
Anyway, yeah, nice to make that connection. So real quick, so this is what I'm going to cover today. And again, I have way more slides. I'll share this, Mr. Chairman, with your crew. If there's any of these slides that people want to go into more detail, I'm more than happy to. I'm local, happy to grab a coffee and have a deeper conversation. So So I will not go through all the different climate impacts because I'm sure you guys are on top of this. One of the beauties of, I know from my time at DNR being in Maryland, is we always had a very environmentally forward, environmentally smart state. And that is magnified here in Annapolis and Anne Arundel County, certainly. So, but any of these slides, I certainly am happy to go into more detail. You guys have all seen this. Uh, I'll stop here real quick, just this one. This was recently published by NOAA, just looking at some of the climate-related disasters last year, and there are 27 separate billion-dollar weather-related events in the United States, the most on record, but that has continued to increase year over year. And you compare that, I also like this slide. And I'm not sure if you have seen this before or not. This is a slide from the National Institute of Building Science. Basically, it looks at kind of the cost avoidance and the benefit of investing in resilience. And it was a 2019 study that looked at, for every dollar invested, you see kind of a $4 to $6 return on investment. So it's kind of that avoided cost. And another, again, going back to my DNR days, we did a study with the University of Massachusetts. And if you've heard of things like green infrastructure, so those like living shorelines, coastal floodplain restoration, stream restoration, et cetera. As far as job return, they saw for every $1 million invested, there's about 15, 20 jobs for green infrastructure versus traditional gray infrastructure. So we're seeing that kind of local job benefit as well. So I'll go into about us. Again, I won't go into too much detail because I wanted to highlight some projects that I thought you guys might be interested in, as well as what we've been up to over the last couple of years. And certainly, Councilman Arnett has heard this way too many times, so I'm not going to bore him specifically about the why we were formed, et cetera. But real quick, for those kind of new to the Resilience Authority, as I mentioned before, these projects, they can be very expensive. There's certainly a need to invest in this, and primarily the investments that needed to address the issue at hand largely is borne out by local governments. It's local governments that have to maintain their roads, address stormwater, et cetera. So they're the ones having to manage these increasing costs. The fact that these costs are increasing is borne out by local governments. Back in 2020, then Senator Elfreth, now Congresswoman Elfreth, she and the General Assembly passed a bill that enabled all counties, counties or municipalities in Maryland to be able to form what's known as a Resilience Authority. Later in 2021. The city of Annapolis and Anne Arundel County, then the mayor of Annapolis, the county executive, as well as the respective county and city councils came together and formed the first multi-jurisdictional authority of its kind in the country. So we work on behalf of both the city and the county. And then on 2022, we had our first board of directors established. We have 9 appointed by the county exec and 3 by the mayor of Annapolis. And I started officially back in 2023. That year, we were able to bring in about $20 million worth of federal and state grants. And then we completed our first project just this past fall. I'm not going to read all this. You guys, again, I'll share these slides. But all this extra words, it's not necessary. Basically, in short, why we were established by the respective county and city councils and the city and the city and the county exec is, can this structure, this Resilience Authority, make the process of planning, funding, and completing these infrastructure projects quicker and more efficient for the city and the county. And another one of our goals is that in addition to helping these projects go over the finish line, can we do it in a manner that reduces the burden on the local tax base? Sorry, as I mentioned before, this is our board of directors. I think what's unique here with the Resilience Authority of Annapolis and Anne Arundel County is we are a government instrumentality, so we can operate as a government unit of both the city and the county. but also we're independent. So we have our own procurement policies. We're able to draw on a whole range of fund sources that might be outside of traditional city and county functions. Then what we do is we bring together experts in finance, infrastructure, climate science, project management into a group to look at these projects and work on behalf of the city and the county. This is the staff, and by design, we're intended to be small, and the idea is, how can we serve as another tool in the toolbox? Can we support all the great resources and expertise that exists within the city and the county? I did not want to create something new. So can we do this really by partnering with what exists? So we have three main staff people. That's myself as the director. We have a director of operations that kind of oversees the day-to-day, and we have a director of programs whose photo's not popping up, but he exists, I swear. And then we've been partnering with the state of Maryland and has successful in getting 2 years of a service corps fellow. And that is positions that are paid for by the state and that provide additional capacity to help us support some of the work that we do. We also have an advisory committee, and that's where this kind of ongoing partnership with the city and the county that has all the different directors of both the city and the county staff that advises, and we work closely together on projects. All right. How we work. So just, by law, we can draw on a range of different funding options for these infrastructure projects. We can charge and collect non-tax related fees, sell state and local tax exempt bonds, utilize state and local and federal nonprofit funding and nonprofit funding to provide capital for projects, as well as combine all sources of these funding for a project. And we can do this also off of the kind of outside of the city and the county budget, so we don't impact kind of the debt restrictions or the debt ceiling within the city and the county. And I'd say kind of the first year or two, our main focus has been, let's get ourselves up and going. So we have everything in place, our governance is in place, all the debt financing policies, procurement procedures, best practices. And really, we've been kind of serving, in addition to working on behalf of the city and the county, a lot of folks within Maryland, a lot of communities within Maryland, as well as national and a few international folks have reached out to us trying to use us as a model. So we're trying to kind of share as what we can as we kind of build this together with the city and the county. Like I said, kind of right after the rip or right after the start, what I promised, like folks like the council member or the city council member, is that our focus is, we want to show proof of concept here. So how can we get projects in the ground and show that we can be effective? So it was really, when I started about 2 years ago, there existed a lot of different grant funding, both at the federal level, state level, and the local level. So let's focus on this kind of a 3-year strategy on where can we work closely with the city and the county, go through all the plans, whether it's roadway vulnerability studies, hazard mitigation plans, the comp plan work, and that the planning office does at the city, uh, the Department of Public Works, stormwater plans. Where are there these projects that fit our mission that we can then kind of crosswalk with all the different grant programs that are out there and try to bring funding through these grant programs to get these projects done. There are about 200 different separate grant programs that at the time, and it seemed like it made some good sense, that we could go after and try to bring in dollars for projects. So that's where we focused. So just kind of quick go into kind of how we've done. Just a quick description of the kind of the buckets of work the buckets or portfolio we work in. So nature and resources, we work to how to protect resilient ecosystems, environments, but at the same time, where we can proactively restore, conserve natural or environmental resources that help to have the potential to reduce risk. So the idea of harness nature to reduce risks, protecting community and private infrastructure. So think roadways, parks, public places, as well as the buildings we work and places we live, and then helping the city and the county ensure energy resilience and resilience of the infrastructure, as well as make that transition to renewable energy sources. So those are the portfolios. This is how we've done. This is only through last July. So I try to update these numbers on a fiscal year. So where we are, we have about, oops, sorry guys. We have about, we brought in about 38 million. Actually, that's probably above that now. We're probably closer to somewhere around 50. We do get some operating support from the county to pay for our kind of ongoing operations. And I do think that has helped us compete successfully for a lot of this project funding. So on that annual return on investment, we've have a number about 4,580% ROI on the county's investment and what we've been brought in. It says about 7 million, but we're probably closer to about $10 million invested in projects. And then you can see the other metrics there, kind of the 48 million in avoided loss. Got some, trying to track job numbers. 6 completed projects so far over the past 2 years. So that's kind of in a nutshell where we've been. And now some of the projects that I thought might be of interest to you guys. And then I'll stop for questions. Is that okay, Mr. Chairman? Good? Okay. So here are the projects across the city, and they range from, like I kind of mentioned earlier in those portfolios, from shoreline protection, both public and private, helping the city with providing technical support on Waterworks Park, looking at resilient building codes. So kind of an interesting project. We got a grant from the Department of Energy to develop a pilot working with the city of Annapolis, the city of Santa Barbara in California, city of Savannah in Georgia, and then Montpelier, Vermont, all have similar kind of building size and building stock. Where can we build energy performance standards as well as resilience standards and create a model that could be considered by those local governments? So that's a project that's ongoing right now. A project I'll touch upon is the Annapolis Maritime Resilience Initiative in one of these slides. Cars in Elktonia Beach we're helping the city with, and I'll touch upon that a little bit, as well as the sea level rise sensors. And in the county, you can see the breadth of projects, everything from working with Fort Meade, trying to bring in some DOD dollars to help improve similar to what was done in the city of Annapolis with the Naval Academy, is we're able to bring in some DOD dollars going through a planning study to look at off-base projects that have the potential to ensure the military installation readiness of Fort Meade. So it's trying to bring dollars into the surrounding community, all the way down to, if you look at from South County, looking at trying to do an innovative beneficial reuse project to protect the Deal Island Peninsula, up to Glen Burnie, to doing redevelopment of their urban town center, trying to do it in a manner that reduces heat impacts and tries to kind of reactivate this space for the community. So some projects that could be of interest to you guys. I think maybe you've been following Cars Beach, so I can fly through this one fairly quickly. We partnered with the city to help bring in some resources to undertake the master planning project, but also kind of the needed project right now to ensure this project is stable, to ensure that we can create a beach that is protecting the property, but also helps kind of embrace the culture as well as the natural resources that are present on site and envisioned with this future city park. So that's what it looks like right now. You can see the shoreline erosion. That purple line was 1932 to how much has eroded to date. And what the idea, we met extensively with the community, held a series of public meetings, kind of we go through our projects, kind of get what the community is interested in terms of that coastal restoration project. And they have come up with a design that kind of captures that, let's, reestablish a resilient beachfront. So this is a combination, using a combination of dunes, beach, there's vegetated headlands to reduce the erosion. And with the amount of sediment that goes out, and if you guys boat in this area that go up and down this bay, the way this beach will work is that we can actually capture the sediment and begin to naturally build this shoreline over time. So that's what that design right now. We're in 60% design, and we're working on trying to get that permitted and getting additional feedback from the community.
Excuse me, Matt,
Yeah.
this very specific question, but did you determine why there's been such erosion in that beach over the years? Is it kind of lack of replenishment of sand from somewhere else, or changing kind of weather and water patterns?
A combination of both, but I do think a big issue here is it's what should be an opportunity to accrete sediment. You're being starved by what's happening up just north and south of it with some of the hardened shorelines. So it's actually created this almost like an eddy effect if you think of like a stream. So it's increased, we think, and we continue to do the modeling on that for the permit submission. It has continued to accelerate that process. But certainly, with the increased tide height, some of the nor'easters we've seen, it's a dynamic area.
Yep. And second thing, just a broader question is, do you find projects or do they find you? I mean, do people come to you with things that they're concerned about, or do you survey areas and you see a problem and you actively reach out to constituents?
A little bit of both. So kind of off the start, I want to really try to embrace the expertise and all the hard work that's been done within both the county and the city. When I used to work with the state, we used to require all these different plans, hazard mitigation plans and nuisance flood plans and comprehensive plans and roadway vulnerability. So we knew these plans existed. Where were these projects that were high priority that we can immediately go after? So that's where we built out kind of that grant strategy. At the same time, once the word got out that we have a resilience authority, that's why I was out on 2 site visits today. We've probably averaged about 2 a week where we've been going out, working, looking at a community issue, working with a property owner, looking at a county road issue. So there's certainly a demand for it.
And then finally, I can see how it would work with a public entity, but with a private entity, are there obligations then that fall upon them as in terms of how you work with them?
Yeah, so we have a little more flexibility in terms of working with private entities than traditional county programs or with the state, some of the difficulties working on private property. So, something like a private shoreline restoration, we're trying to figure out a model that is equitable and fair. And, we actually did get a grant, a public grant to kind of test this idea of a graduated, public-private partnership in which the private landowner puts forward some dollars. We're able to get some grant dollars to kind of kick this off because there's an environmental gain for the community with doing the right project in the right places. And there's also a potential to get some crediting for this, whether it's credits regarding critical area impacts or credits regarding MS4 and some of the Bay TMDL that can potentially further this project on. So this private shoreline issue is something we've been struggling with Chesapeake Bay wide. Actually, all coastal states have this issue. It's because the majority of shoreline is owned privately. So try to figure out a strategy that is fair and equitable, but then could get these projects and the right projects in the right places is something we're trying to explore with this grant.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah. And you guys may have seen this or not. This is and again, this might be worth a deeper presentation to this group. I know the Anne Arundel County folks, we gave a presentation on this. This is a partnership we developed with the University of Hawaii and University of Maryland. These are real-time water level sensors. They provide feedback every 6 seconds, and it goes, to your phone. So, you guys have access to these sensors and the data that comes out. And we've got a grant through NOAA, and again, in partnership with the University of Maryland, to deploy 10 throughout Anne Arundel County. We put the first 5 in Annapolis. So we have sensors right now installed and providing feedback into that TideCast platform. There's one at Annapolis Yacht Club, one at Eastport Yacht Club. That's where this photo is. one in Annapolis Maritime, one at the nature park, the Back Creek Park there, and one at the Harbor Master. So we have 5 sites identified, and we've already started seeing kind of the divergence on what we've been using at, at the state level, at the county, the city level with the NOAA buoy, and trying to compare that and doing the predictive value based on kind of these hyper localized sensors. We have another 5 going through Anne Arundel County. We have 3 installed and 2 more going in place, and they're on that map there. And idea is, building out tools to help support emergency management. You think public works, so you start looking at, you can have it over roads, so you get that real-time water level height. At a certain height, your road starts to get cut off when you need to reposition emergency trucks or fire trucks for communities that could potentially get cut off. So that's where we're trying to develop these tools, working closely with folks like Dave Mendel and Director Simmons, and then certainly on the county side. So again, happy to show another presentation, and certainly the app is great, and I'll share that with your folks, Mr. Chairman, after the meeting. But you can set up warnings. So if, like, some of the yacht clubs have asked for, like, hey, when it reaches this height, we know we need to go retire our lines. So kind of getting that information to go to your phones might be a useful tool that these folks can help us develop. And the last one, and this is one the Alderman Arnett participated in, I believe. So again, I apologize for repeating a lot of the stuff that he's seen, but this was one of the first grants we received. We got a grant through National Fish and Wildlife to do a heavily publicly informed resiliency assessment for Back Creek watershed. So that's all Eastport and going around Back Creek. And the idea would be, with the work that's happening in downtown Annapolis, can we begin to develop the highest profile projects based on community input, based on risk assessment, et cetera, for that peninsula and going around to that maritime district of Back Creek. So, again, it's like, where can we harness nature, reduce risk? Let's, target this smaller watershed boundary. And that's, certainly get the heavily community input to engage. And the idea would be, here are the projects that came, the identification that came out of it. We have funding to do kind of the highest priority initial 10 projects based on a decision-making structure that was developed with community input. And then we're currently going after funding to try to figure out how to bring those projects from design into implementation. So that's where that project is. So those were 3 highlights for the city of Annapolis. I'm sure I went through a bunch, so I apologize, Mr. Chairman, and hopefully I didn't take too long.
Oh, that was very, very informative. And are you going to be able to share the slide with us as well as the link?
Yep, I will share everything afterwards with I think I have the staff contact on here on your email, so I'll share that, and then certainly my contact information. So if anybody has any follow-up, I'm more than happy to sit down and meet with them.
Does anybody on the board or any of our guests have any questions for Mr. Fleming?
Well, I don't know how you do it all, Matt. Gee whiz.
One of my main reasons for making the jump from the county, from the state to the city and the county, there's so much great expertise that exists already within both the city and the county to build off of. So it's
so Matt, if you were to do an elevator pitch, what you do, what would you say?
I got to work on that.
Yeah. Having read the paragraphs, I think so.
Yeah, no, I think the idea is trying to figure out how to future-proof Anne Arundel, and try to do it in a manner that reduces the burden on the local tax base.
What is there a timeline for Cars Beach? Because I know that's been in the news lately, but over the past couple of years, and I'm wondering but I don't recall seeing a timeline.
Yeah, and I can pull some of that up. I don't have it in front of me, but the master plan concept has been developed, and that's going to be presented in the next, I think in the next month is a public meeting to present kind of the thing, based on we had some of the initial feedback on the master plan in terms of what folks wanted to see there. That kind of first concept's going to be presented back, I think, in June. And then as far as the coastal restoration project or the resilience project, so we're at 60% design. The permitting is a wild card. Not trying to put, permitting can be tough, and this is certainly, we're trying to be very forward thinking here in this project. So it could take a while, but once that project is permitted, it could be completed in 8 weeks, from mobilization to completion. So that part, it's getting from the, ensuring we do the appropriate community input, and permitting can take the bulk of what we usually plan for like an 18 months from start to finish on a, kind of a large scale coastal restoration project.
Thank you.
So
Anyone
Matt,
else have anything?
yeah, just another question in terms of the community engagement and public hearings or meetings. How is that kind of publicized, if you will?
Yeah, and I see Council Member or Alderman Arnett with his hand up, and he may have gotten, so like on the specific project, like the AMRI, the Annapolis Maritime Resilience Initiative, there was mailings, postings that went out. They actually went posted in flyers on public meetings in like bars and restaurants, where people would um, and to
And their
get folks out
constituents.
the constituents to get out to these meetings. So we can advertise through social media, but we found that the geographic area for the specific project really try to get locally based, working through the different networks on a local project based type thing.
Very good. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I think Alderman Arnett has his hand up.
Yep, go ahead,
Both
Rob.
hands up.
So, Matt, you're right. I've seen bits and pieces of this, but when you're sending out this presentation, can you get someone to send it to the council also? Because you've really put it together in a package that really is informative to me, and I would bet to my colleagues as well.
Absolutely.
One more question.
Yeah, Duncan.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, who owns the Cars Beach area now?
It's a city. It's a city property.
City property.
It's gonna be a
Okay,
city park.
terrific. Way to go.
They did an amazing job pulling that all together.
Whew.
Thank you, Gavin Buckley, and unfortunately, our departed Blacks of the Chesapeake. I saw the picture there. Blanking on his name right now, but
Vince Leggett.
Vince Leggett, yeah.
Vince Leggett, yeah. He was really a mover and shaker and very helpful too.
That's a great thing.
All right, Matt, thank you again. With your contact information, I'm sure if we have questions, any of the board will reach out to you. We look forward to hearing more about it.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks, Matt. Really well done.
All right, let's move to get back into a regular order of the agenda. The first thing I actually wanted to point out was we have a new member, Tom Weaver. I see Tom is listening, not on video, but Tom, you want to give us a brief background for those of you that, for those of the board that don't know you? I do know Tom, known Tom a long time.
There's Tom Weaver.
Hey, hi everybody. So I'm familiar with most of you on this board. Well, of course, as soon as I do that, somebody calls me. Yes, I was Gavin approached me a wee while ago and said there's an opportunity or a vacancy on the board. Would I be considered doing it? And I've said, of course. I've lived here for 35 years in Eastport, where I am now. I have several businesses here, full-time fishing guide right now and a boat builder. And I've spent 35 years in and around Eastport, and very, very interested in seeing what happens. I've seen a lot of changes, and I'm looking forward to working with everybody here to progress forward and hopefully have a great future for Annapolis and Annapolis area.
Thank you, Tom, and we look forward to having you join us. As I said, I've known Tom for a long time, and Tom is going to be a very welcome addition to the board and a lot of breadth of knowledge and historical perspective on Eastport and our area, the Chesapeake. Let's go to the approval of the minutes. Kimberly sent the minutes out a couple weeks ago. I had one small typographical correction that she made. She resent them recently. Is there anybody have any comments or changes to the minutes at the moment? Seeing none, is there a motion to adopt the minutes from April of 2025?
So moved.
Mr. Thomasini and Ms. Wildby is seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of adoption of the minutes?
Aye.
Everybody, Kimberly? Moving on to the regular old business. Andy, was there a MAIB meeting in April?
Not that I was aware of. I don't think I was on tap to go. If I was, I failed.
I don't think there was, but and Duncan, you're on tap if there is a meeting in May. Again,
Yeah, I hope somebody tells us about it.
yeah, I don't know that I saw any meeting in, but it's if there is one, you're on tap.
Got it.
On their website, they have a listing of the meetings, and I think they have only 4 or at the most 6 a year, but it's on their website if you can access that.
Yeah, they have by code, they have to have 4 a year. And they sometimes will do 2 in a row and then skip 3 months. It's not a quarterly type of thing. It's sort of as needed, but a minimum of 4. Next item, I think everybody, and I resent it in case you didn't get it. I sent a copy of the Harbor Master's report from today. As some of you, or you all may or may not know, the harbor master is on leave. She had some surgery. Tyler Northfield is wearing multiple hats and is up to his neck. I suspect particularly happens to be the meeting, and they had a full-on Blue Angel show today. So he had contacted me earlier today and had said it was unlikely that he would attend, and I told him I certainly understood, but he did forward his report. I think and he highlighted the updates. I don't. Anyone has any questions? It's really the one besides the update on the status of the he calls it Marine Vessels Task Force. I think we've referred to it as the House Barge Task Force. But in addition to that, there's a drawing, a conceptual drawing for the reconfiguration of the St. Mary's mooring field, the city mooring field just above the Spa Creek Bridge. I'm not exactly sure that I understand it because there seem to be a lot of overlapping circles, which to me make it a little confusing that you're going to have overlapping swing areas for boats, but obviously they all tend to lay to wind or current, but they are anomalies. So I'm looking forward to having somebody explain a little bit what with this. It doesn't appear that this drawing has addresses where they would relocate the moorings, the several moorings that they plan to take out, which was going to be farther up Spa Creek in the vicinity of President's Point. But I guess we'll get more.
Yeah. Harry?
Yes.
So the purpose of reconfiguring like this is to accommodate larger boats up Spa Creek, is that right?
They apparently the St. Mary's mooring field, which was accommodating, I want to say 35-foot boats, maybe in that range, apparently was somewhat underutilized, and there was more of a demand for the up to 55-foot vessels. At the same time, a few meetings back, we had a discussion with some of the residents from President's Point in particular about congestion, boats dragging anchor, not being on moorings, and it kind of dovetailed into having, if they're going to take out some of the smaller moorings and reconfigure the mooring field, then to also look at any reconfiguration or configuration farther up at just before Truxton Park there.
Yeah.
The next item is actually the status of the.
Hold on, Terry, one sec. Do we know the status on wasn't St. Mary's thinking about doing a shoreline, living shoreline restoration project at right where that mooring field is going to be changed?
So that was about 2 years ago. They had a project in the works that had floated around. I think they'd floated it with the city.
Yep.
We discussed it. Then it was on. It disappeared for a while, and I recently saw that they might be revisiting it. But if you look at,
I thought I saw it on a port warden's agenda or something like that, where they were thinking about resubmitting, but I can't remember whether they were just looking for advice or if they had redrawn it. Or
I don't remember seeing it on the port wardens, but I'm assuming that hopefully they're coordinating with the with Bayland, who I guess that's the name of the Bayland Consultants, in terms of they're not going to reconfigure their shoreline and that overlaps with the mooring field, which I don't think they are. I didn't understand that what they were doing to the shoreline the first time around was not going to extend the shoreline out into the water any farther. I didn't think, but I could be mistaken on that one. Ross, do you happen to know whether anything about the St. Mary's shoreline?
No, I've lost track of it, and I don't have any update from what you have, but I've got a note to ask about it tomorrow.
Very good.
Hey, Terry.
Yes.
If you have a chance to talk to Tyler, tell him this is a great report. I really enjoyed it. Thanks.
I'm sorry.
Tell him it was a great report. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was actually quite pretty concise.
Yeah.
Good.
Agreed. Somebody's gotten a lot of grants.
So the item 5C, which is the status of the houseboat task force marina slip inventory, he highlighted that apparently there's the task force has met twice, once in April and more recently on May 14th, and they've assigned some tasks to individual task force leaders, and they're looking to compile a living document. I assume that's a pun on words since we're talking about houseboats, by the June 11th meeting, and with a goal to get a final report out in July. I know Ross and I have talked about the fact that just how comprehensive or complete a report can they do, and this is a complicated subject to say the least, and how they can get a report out by June 11th. Seems that the data collection alone would take longer than that, but maybe Ross has more information on that than I do.
Yeah, I've been listening in on their meetings, and I have to say I was quite impressed with how serious they're taking it. They have like 22 different assignment areas. Fortunately, at the last meeting, they combined a lot of them and have made it a much smaller set of tasks. And they've got some pretty good people, serious sounding people volunteering to do work on each of these. And they're going to do as much as they can, given the short time constraint that they have. I'm actually kind of optimistic that we'll get some useful information. Certainly they're taking it very seriously. And we also have to give the harbor master staff credit. They've really put their shoulder to the wheel and put together a lot of information as well.
Yeah, I would agree. So I've attended the excuse me, the first two meetings, and they've come up with Guy is and Rod have put together, I think, a good process of having tasks and having I guess a task master. But so I'm working on with Tyler the categorization or itemization of number of slips and then dividing them between commercial and residential. So,
Rick, are you looking at only commercial slips or are you looking at all slips?
all slips. I think the idea is to capture all of them. I think item 6 was to figure out how many slips, and item 7 was to break them into residential and commercial. So, yeah, so that's the idea. I would say one thing, because a city council was there, or excuse me, the lawyer, and so some of the topics that would come up might there was this is kind of outside the purview of the group, would be his statement, such as, well, because overnight rentals are not permitted in the city, you don't need to look at that, because then the people that are Airbnb their boats, let's say, somewhat surreptitiously, you don't need to look at that because that's not allowed. So I think these are the soft issues that really the task force can opine on, collect information. So anyway, so I think it's moving in the right direction, but I think the thing to push back, at least myself, is coming up with the right questions and not getting hung up on if it's not within the if you will, legal purview, because just saying something's not allowed and therefore you don't need to research it just kind of forgets about what the reality is.
Well, and actually the intent of the ordinance of the resolution to set up the task force. So yeah, I was a little flummoxed by some of the things Mr. Lyle said.
Yep.
I take it though that the task force is, notwithstanding his suggestion that you don't need to look at things that are prohibited, that the task force is going to go ahead and do a comprehensive survey.
That's my sense. They'll do what they can do with the time constraint, and it's unfortunate that this has blown up so late in the term. But I was very struck with and pleased by how seriously people were taking the assignment, and the spirit of it was, we'll do what we can do with the time we have allowed, and that's really all you can ask.
So Rick, I thought it was last Friday. It might be this Friday. I can't remember now, but I think it was last Friday because it was pouring down rain. And that's what reminded me. There was a barbecue, a liveaboards barbecue at Annapolis City Marina. Rick, Frida, did you were nodding your head.
Well, I was out of town till about 9 o'clock that night, but Frank Thorpe went and attended and spoke with everybody and said it was a productive get together.
Good. When it was, I guess it was probably, I assume it was undercover because Friday night was not conducive, to an outdoor in the parking lot.
That's what he said.
Rita, what was the topic? What were they talking about?
I think just the status of liveaboards and their interactions with the city and maritime zoning, and just a conglomeration of different topics. But they just that group, I get the impression they just want someone to listen to them and their interests.
That's good.
I think they've become a little more organized as a group as a result of the discussion about houseboats and liveaboards
Yeah.
et cetera, and they seem, which is good. I mean, that they have a voice as a group, and that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think, well, the chair, Guy, is a liveaboard, so they're certainly going to have voice. And it may be, though, and I don't know much about the liveaboard community, but there are issues such as pumping out and whether people actually pump out, discharge where they perhaps shouldn't. So I'm perhaps the liveaboards have been trying to be on the quieter side of things, not to be noticed, but now is the time to speak up and have their issues heard and examined.
Rick, do you have a sense whether is the liveaboard population predominantly in commercial marinas, or is it a much more varied bag?
Well, that I don't know. In fact, I have to look back at the task. I don't know if there's an item or an attempt to count the number of liveaboards that are in Annapolis. So that, to me, that would be the first thing to understand. I know, for example, in speaking with Rod Javen, that I think he may have 3 liveaboards at his marina. So that would seem to be not many, but I don't know how that plays out in other marinas. So I think a good question, which I will get an answer to, but is there an estimate of how many liveaboards there are in Annapolis?
Yeah, I think you're
Well,
going
I
to find.
actually testified to the city council because they are trying to be kept out of the line of fire, but they have 50 liveaboards by their count, 49, and then they amended it to 50 that they gave on public testimony. And we changed the name of the task force to focus on commercial operations rather than all liveaboard or residential kinds of things. But it's unavoidable that there are such overlaps, and it was actually the houseboat people themselves that pointed out we're no different than all of the liveaboards. So it was that group that actually drew them into the line of fire. But, I don't think anybody wants to mess, I certainly do not, with the liveaboards. I think they're part of our fun Annapolis culture, and we don't want to step on them in any way. And they've pointed out the many benefits they bring to the marinas that they live in, including Mary O'Brien herself, who has pulled 2 people out of the water, probably saved the life of at least one of them. So it's part of the maritime culture, and we don't want to sort of throw the baby out with the bathwater. So we're trying to figure out how we avoid all that.
I couldn't agree with you more, Russ. We've got, I can't tell exactly, but we've got a lot of liveaboards at Port Annapolis, and we consider them a great help to security any way you look at it. And they add character. I love it.
I have a question. Yeah. So what is the definition of a liveaboard? Would it be a number of days a year or a month or a week or something else?
We asked you first. We don't know.
Yeah, exactly. That's a problem right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we even have a definition at Port Annapolis. I mean, if you're on the boat, you're on the boat, and you're using we have a pump out cart and all that stuff. And
Yep.
God bless them.
Yes, Scott.
And I just didn't understand totally the number of liveaboards. Is that by person or by boat? Because you could have one boat and one person, or you could have a dormitory with 10 people on it. So I didn't say you have 50 liveaboards in Annapolis. Is that 50 boats or 50 humans? So
We're not asking them about their living arrangements.
just, is it a head count or a boat count?
I don't know. We'd have to go back to Mary O'Brien. She's the one that testified, and she's on the committee. And boy, talk about a workhorse. I think she's going to be a real dynamo on the committee.
Yeah.
So it might be something good to have as we go forward understanding this.
Yeah, I'm trying not to ask too many questions about that because, again, it's not really the principal focus, if you ask anybody, is they don't want commercial short-term rental houseboats. Of course, that's easy to say, but what if somebody's renting their Grand Banks? Or I know a former ECA board member who lives on a 35-foot sailboat at Annapolis City Marina. I mean, the definitions, as Peter pointed out, get very fuzzy very quickly. And I wish the whole thing hadn't come up. We took care of it with the legislation back in 2008, and we've been living peacefully. But it's here and we got to deal with it.
For those of you that don't, Andy, I'll get to you, but for those of you that don't remember 2008 or weren't here, the city in that adopted a limit on basically houseboats based and they were limited. What is it? One per if it were only allowed in marinas that had more than 50 slips, and it was one per 50 slips or something like that. It was
any marina over 50 slips, 2% of the slips over 50 could be occupied by house barges, which includes not only houseboats, but also office boats and gas stock boats and a whole host of things.
All right, Andy.
Just an aside, I've been a liveaboard a lot of my life. I would never rent a slip in a marina that wouldn't allow me to spend the night on my boat. And lots of people live on their boats part-time, especially in the summer, and people commute from their boats to wherever they're going to work or vice versa. I've had good friends who keep a boat in DC and a boat in Annapolis. They have their weekend boat and their going to work boat. And that's just a lifestyle.
Yeah.
All right, anybody else? Mike, what is happening with the small business work group?
Go ahead. All right. So before I jump into the small business work group, I wanted to cover two past agenda items. First, the county MIAB did not meet in April. They are not scheduled to meet in May. Next scheduled meeting is June the 30th, then July 28th, then September 29th.
Okay.
And then two, last meeting, this is for you, Rick. Last meeting, we were trying to figure out the name of the marina in the corner across from the Eastport Democratic Club. I was there just the other day. It is Stella's Marina. And Stella's Marina has a certain number of slips and probably, I'm going to guess, a couple of liveaboards just because of how close they are to the shopping center and other amenities in Eastport. The small marine business task force, the latest status update was, I think in April or March, Seth Lehner, who was a member of the group, gave a presentation to the Rules and City Government Committee with some suggested recommendations. It was then at that meeting discussed by the chair that the next step might be to go to a council work session. The council work session date came out maybe first week in May. The recommended date was something in July, at which point Seth and I talked together and shared our feelings with Hope that if this is the kind of thing that would have to go before the Planning Commission anyway, and the meeting wouldn't happen until July, it wasn't going to be put before this council. So it didn't make much sense to go and do a work session with a council that was largely going to turn over in November. So I think it's a stay tuned, I think, at this point.
Maybe Mike, picking up on one of the things you said though that may intersect then with the kind of the houseboat task force. And Ross, as you said, that the city council had kind of dealt with the issue of houseboats in 2008, that only marinas with 50 slips or more could have houseboats, which is kind of maybe a kind of a crude way of addressing it, because you can't have very many houseboats because there are not many marinas that have that many slips. But this kind of gets back to the small marina business task force, in that, why should they be penalized because they have 20 slips and they can't have a houseboat? So I think, that's something that the task force, depending on what kind of recommendations the chairs decide to come out with, but I think will need to be addressed. I don't think it's necessarily fair just to do a cut based on size, and therefore only those marinas could have houseboats.
Yeah, the real distinction is the maritime zone. So you're correct. Basically the current legislation allows houseboats in the WMI. Um, Annapolis City Marina can probably have it. Ironically, Watergate or Nautilus Point could have houseboats, except they're not in the maritime zone. And that's why I asked the question about commercial versus residential slips. Um, the WME is an artifact of history. It existed long before the city code, in fact, long before the city largely. And most of those marinas were commercial fishing boat marinas, and they just got inherited into the residential area. The problem is the close proximity to residences. And it's just like how close do we want residents to come to boats on jack stands and things like that. So it's an extraordinarily complicated process. And I think, as a couple of you have already indicated, it's probably a process that's going to carry over to the next administration. There just isn't time really to do this justice. And it is largely in response to two special interest groups, which doesn't mean the groups aren't special, but they got left out of the big 2021 ordinance. And we're going to have to sort our way through. I am very, very interested in this, and so I'm not going to let it go, even though I'm going away. But it is complicated in the extreme. It's complicated in sorting out with the harbor master what is their province versus the Coast Guard province. Some of the small marinas want the Coast Guard to monitor the liveaboards. Well, the Coast Guard isn't going to do that. And the city has life safety issues for all rental properties, water or not. So every time I look at this, which is virtually every day, it gets more complicated, not less.
Yeah.
And that's why, again,
and
having good people on that committee is important. I mean, I'm delighted to hear the enthusiasm from the committee.
Oh yeah, and I think your points are well taken about the residences and how they would be affected. I'm just saying that the cut between large and small may be too crude a tool in terms of how to achieve that.
I think you're right. And not only that, it was done quickly because we had that company that had two houseboats tied up next to um, the restaurant there at Cardi Templeton's Chart House, and they were starting to rent them out as short-term rentals. And we got aware of it because the harbor master said we can't pump out these boats, and they were overwhelmed. And that's when we started looking at it. And back in 2008, we did a lot of exploration. Houseboats were exploding back then. They've exploded and imploded in a lot of places, including Tennessee Valley Authority Lake and stuff like that. So this is going to take some real effort and thought.
Agreed.
So Rick,
Yes.
also Scott had shared with me, and then Joe Cater followed up. Joe Cater has been doing some research on houseboats in particular in a variety of different locales, and he had done a preliminary. I think his preliminary report was out in the last couple of weeks. Has that committee had that report available?
No, not that I know of, but I must say, in fact, Duncan was good enough to introduce me to Joe, and I reached out to Joe, and I will double check my emails. I may be remiss because sometimes things slip through. So I'm trying to connect with Joe on that, and certainly would share that with the chairs of the task force.
Yeah, Terry, I think you're right. I talked to Joe about 2 weeks ago, and he had a lot of data. And so hang on to him, Rick, and see what he's got.
Yep. I do that.
This is somewhat on me as well because, first of all, I employed Joe as a contractor in my professional life and have connected with him off and on. I was going to get him and Jackie Giles together and see if we can't find some money to hire him as a resource for the task force, but the city more generally. And he is a very good analyst and has clearly got some off the shelf information we can give to the committee to help them in their thinking. But with Jackie being out, we just haven't had a chance to connect.
I think
I've spoken to Joe.
money well spent.
Excuse me. I've spoken to Joe a little bit about this, and he has got significant information. Terry, I don't know if you shared that his outline, but he has gone all over the country. However he does it, gets the information from the various boating communities, and it's quite interesting what each community has done. And some have done differently, and some have just banned them totally, and some accept them wholeheartedly. But he's all the way from Seattle, San Francisco to San Diego, along the Gulf Coast in Florida, and a lot of boating towns similar to Annapolis. And Newport was interesting. I may not have it exactly right, but Newport basically banned houseboats summarily because they didn't want to see them on the waterfront near the restaurants. Just different towns do different things for different reasons, and it's quite interesting information. I think that can save Annapolis a lot of time in making their decisions or making smarter decisions along the way. So,
Rick, just if I think I did recall seeing an email from him, and I'm going to go back like you and look and see. But if you don't find it and I don't send it to you, just reach out to me the next day or so. And I'm pretty sure I did recall seeing something a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I will definitely do that because I think one of the things the task force is doing is using reports that have been done by others elsewhere, like Lex is sharing what Anne Arundel County did in terms of kind of economic impact report. Lex Burney was going to share that with the group. So I think you're right. Unless we're leveraging research that's already been done, given this timeline, the report will not be particularly good from the task force. So Joe's information could be great.
I think so too.
Yeah. And you're talking, Rick, about the SAGE report that was done 2016, I think?
Yes, correct. Thank you.
Just backtracking a bit, we sort of briefly touched on it when we talked about the Harbor Master's report. The Spa Creek channel anchoring mooring issues are sort of dovetailing into the reconfiguration of the Spa Cove mooring field, and we'll probably, as a line item in the agenda, we'll probably just start treating it as combined with the Spa Cove realignment, because they're basically the same, in the Harbor Master's report, because they're both basically the same issue. And we also, Hope gave us a brief update on the city dock project. So that item was addressed, which I believe then brings us down to ordinance 0925.
Gary, before you go past that channel, it's also going to involve Severn. I've been working on this one as well. It's actually Eastport Yacht Club was asking about the ability to have moorings for people that are coming in for races, and they wanted to know if they could have some mooring fields over by them, sort of at the foot of Severn and so forth. And I actually think that's a good place. The initial conversation was putting the more moorings off along the Naval Academy wall. And I said, wait, that's the start for frostbites. We can't put them there. And we can't put more in the harbor because I'm coming in under Spinnaker and I don't want to have to dodge all of those. So I think it's still very much a work in progress.
Having gone into that little the indentation there between Maryland Capital Yacht Club and Eastport Yacht Club, I don't know how many racing sailboats could actually get in there on a mooring just because of the depth, but it's not,
Pretty far in there. In a
uh,
sense.
the other thing, which, the more you put them out into the area, between the show marker and Triton Light, in that area, now you're impinging on Opti race courses, 420 race courses, college sailing, high school sailing, and that's a factor too. So it's
I think we should just
another complicated issue.
Yeah. We'll just fill in all the water and not have anybody.
But
As part of our
unfortunately, according to Matt, we're actually getting more water, not less. It's just that it's vertical as opposed to horizontal.
Oh,
All right, 0925, which is maritime uses in the R4 zoning. I circulated, I think, after our last meeting, Ross had mentioned it, that the legislation was coming. I circulated the proposed the ordinance and the initial staff report. Since that time, there's been some discussion about the language in the proposed legislation, and Ross and I actually had a conversation about changes that may be forthcoming. And so at this point, it's more a question of stay tuned, I think, than it's not going to go any place real quickly. We may get some amendments to the tweaking to the language to make it more narrow to what their uses are, not narrow it necessarily in scope, but narrow it down to the uses. The thing that I had recalled from our last meeting was that, and Duncan in particular, you can help fill us in, is that it did not seem that the commercial marinas in the WM zones, in particular WME and WMI, were particularly concerned about having having paddlecraft at Nautilus Point being the old Watergate, or about the fact that sea tow or the tiki barge might be there. Am I misunderstanding?
I don't think so, Terry. I think you're probably right. Certainly from our point of view, it's congested, it's wild, it's crazy, and so far it's okay.
Okay.
Well, my takeaway from the meeting was I thought I had a little bit of concern about making that R4 more maritime and therefore being in direct competition with existing maritime businesses. And that's certainly not something that I want to do. It's a struggle enough, as most of you know better than me, to be in the maritime business. So trying to figure out the right balance here to allow basically paddlecraft, but not get into direct competition with regular marinas.
Yeah, so I think, Ross, I think you're thinking exactly right there. I think I may have brought up the objection when the whole task force several years ago in terms of changing WMI in order to help out the marinas who were restricted in what they could do. And what came out maybe well intentioned, but really didn't have any impact on anybody. And yet here we were coming up with something that was basically taking marine activities to a residential area. And so almost back to your point about 2008, trying to limit houseboats, if you can limit it really to Nautilus Point and paddleboards, I think it's great. I think Cap Sub, they should have access. That's all great. But as we know, it seemed like originally the bill, people were adding all sorts of things to that Christmas tree. So the narrower, the better.
Yeah. Yeah, like delicatessens and mini marts and a whole bunch of things,
Yes,
which may come because of the comp plan. But anyway, there's only really two places. It's Nautilus Point and it's Severn House. And Severn House is a condominium, and they have condominium rules about what they can do there or not. But none of this stuff is straightforward, and you always have to worry about stepping on somebody else's toes when you're trying to deal with the principle that's coming to you for legislation.
All right. That, I look at my check marks, concludes the agenda. I'll throw it open. Does anybody have any questions, comments, observations for the good of the order?
I have one.
Duncan.
Since I am next up at the Maritime Industry Advisory Board meeting on June 30th, surprise, surprise to Duncan, I am away on charter. So I am trying to find one of you guys to swap with. So there you go. I'll be bruising God's waters elsewhere.
I thought you had the May meeting.
I do, but the May meeting's not happening. It's been moved to June, so I was afraid I was going to get tapped.
No, you get a free pass.
Da, 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 da.
I will
I withdraw my comment.
Your comment is considered withdrawn. I will make a note to see, actually, if everybody just sits tight for a second.
Oh, man. This Industry Advisory Board meeting is so irregular.
Get out my handy dandy cheat sheet.
This will just run for city council, Duncan. It'd be
Oh,
short.
no. You could not pay me.
So Mr. Trogdon has the June 30th meeting.
No backs.
Okay.
Right. Terry, there is one other thing coming up that the MAB needs to know about, and that's because the city is putting in an ADA compliant dock at the end of 6th Street at Back Creek, it's impinging on Safe Harbor. And I'm working with Alan Hyatt to look at the possibility of changing the harbor line, which I've been out on that looking at the water. And to me, like it could, the Catherine being able to get in and out of their building without using a lot of bow thrusters. But anyway, I haven't seen anything from Alan Hyatt lately, but the notion would be to extend the middle of Safe Harbor out a little bit in order to compensate for the loss of use of slips right along close to 6th Street, at the end of 6th Street. I don't have any legislation, only the promise of discussions, but it will certainly be coming to you guys for consideration, as
So
well as
if I remember, and I should have looked at it as I went out of Back Creek and came back in Back Creek, except that I'll digress a moment. So after the Blue Angels show, the number of SUP paddlecraft coming into Back Creek was a large number. Interestingly enough, they had a couple of basically policemen on the water with them, telling them, stay over to the right, stay over to the right. They were in a long line. They were not 9 abreast across the creek. And as they came in Back Creek, they were directing them to go around that to go on the shore side of the red marker that's in the cove there off of, sort of off of Davis's. But I was very impressed at how they were herding the cats very effectively, with a lot of boat traffic all coming into Back Creek at the same time. But what it brought to mind is that my recollection is that it may not be a bow, but that Safe Harbor has a sort of a curvature to it, that if you connected the two ends with the harbor line, it wouldn't affect it, frankly, wouldn't affect anything, because you can't get inside those two endpoints anyway. So,
well, I'll leave that to the harbor master and the port wardens. I think you're right, but I checked it out myself. I looked at the Catherine and thought, boy, we can't go out too far because that could be tough for them to get out and do their business.
what's the Catherine?
The watermark.
Catherine Marie.
Catherine Marie.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're on the
Other side.
other side.
But directly across from where this harbor line change would occur.
So their exit path would be restricted.
I'll have to look at that. I thought they were down around by on the part of Annapolis Landing over by the by Crab.
No, they're further up Back Creek from that. But well, we'll go out on your boat tomorrow and check it out.
No, it's going to rain tomorrow. I'm not going out tomorrow.
So
All
right
right.
now, bird's eye view, Catherine Marie is on the eastern side of Annapolis Landing, and the Cabaret, because the Raven is in town, is facing towards that section of Safe Harbor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there was a big boat there that I thought,
Yeah,
could be a problem.
it's Cabaret, which is a big boat, but I think she might only be there because the Raven is in town for the Blue Angels.
All right. Well, then good. No problem. Alan
All
Hyde
right.
will be happy.
Anybody else have anything before I ask for a motion to adjourn?
I'm just going to mention really quickly, because there's a lot of knowledge in this room, and I would love to pick brains with all of you. Terry was asked to present to the Eastport Civic Association topics including this board and the maritime zoning districts. He has graciously supplied me with a slide deck. I would like to fill in some historical knowledge so that I can be as informed as I can before I go to inform others. So expect an email or so from me. That meeting of the ECA is on June 10th, and I guess I'm the keynote speaker. So between now and then, I'll be reaching out to you guys for some historical reference points.
And I was on an airplane that evening, so I tapped Mike in his official capacity as vice chair. But yes, any input that you can have to him. I did the presentation he's talking about, I did to the Rotary Club. They asked me to enlighten them about maritime zones in Annapolis at one of their luncheon meetings, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. So I put together sort of the history and little slideshow, and which I've shared with Mike. And so please respond to him. He's on the hot seat for that.
I'm on the edge of my chair.
All right. Hearing nothing else, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Mr. Tomasini is quick on that one. Mr. Hood seconded it. All in favor? Kimberly, thank you.